We arrived in the US in July. It had only been 48 hours since I left my desk in Nairobi and I said a tearful goodbye to our housekeeper and her son. My husband and I had been living in Kenya for the past 2 years, where I worked for the US Refugee Admissions Program. It was an amazing job. I traveled all over sub-Saharan Africa. I met extraordinary people, and I impacted the lives of thousands. But it was also a hard job. I just spent the last 3 months working every single day so we could prepare for the movement of 20,000 Congolese refugees who are destined to start new lives in the United States. As we pulled up to the house we rented in the US, I felt a bit anxious. I realized this was going to be the first time in 2 years that I lived in a house that didn't have a 10-foot perimeter wall or a security guard. In fact, all that was around the house was that giant blue Montana sky. I knew it was going to be a while before I adjusted to life in the US. We had a friend who lived in Billings, Montana, which was about a 6-hour drive, and she was kind enough to find this house for us, and she also laid a mattress out for us so my husband and I had somewhere to sleep on our first night in the US. Aside from that mattress, there was nothing in that house. All of our belongings were in a shipping container somewhere from Kenya and Montana. I didn't expect them for another 3 or 4 months. Except, of course, for my dog and my husband's 2 cats. They were arriving the next day. I remember being so excited to see my dog Ichabod that I walked away from the shipping counter and I left my husband's cats behind. So day 2 in the US, and I start my new job as Executive Director for the International Rescue Committee of Missoula, Montana. On my second day of the job, I go and I find myself in office. Of course, my actual office is being built, so I have to find a place that I can work out of. So I find myself a closet in the building where my office is being made. Now, a little bit about Montana. Up until the time I arrived, there had been no refugee resettlement program in the entire state. It was one of 2 states without a refugee program. So that meant not only do I have to start a new program to support refugees, build out an office, hire staff, I also had the responsibility of teaching a city and a state how to prepare and receive refugees. It was a daunting task, but a challenge I felt up to. Now, the IRC had been invited to Missoula by the community and by the local government. They had asked us to come and open a resettlement program, and I felt very warm and welcome there. But not everybody in Montana was happy about the idea of refugee resettlement. Montana is a predominantly white state. It has little diversity and a number of hate groups: anti-Islamic, anti-Semitic, white nationalists. And they did not hesitate to tell me their thoughts about refugee resettlement. As one white nationalist told me, I was single-handedly ruining the last great bastion of white culture in the United States. Even with this challenge, I felt we needed to continue. And within a week, I had 100 volunteers come forward wanting to be part of the resettlement program. This was amazing because there was no way we were going to do all of this work by ourselves. We really needed the community support. But having 100 volunteers means I need to figure out what to do with 100 volunteers. So I get to work and I start developing a volunteer program. The premise of the program is pretty simple. Every refugee family that arrives gets a mentor team of 5 people. That mentor team is with the family. They help me set up the home, they greet them at the airport, and they stay with that family for their first 90 days. They're with them for their ups and downs, and they fill in the gap where we can't meet all of the family's needs. Now, my hope in these mentor programs is that at the end of 90 days, the mentors and the family have built friendships that will last a lifetime. So I go about my job for the first month. I meet with government, I meet with the governor's office, public and private partners and community members. Meanwhile, my husband and I are falling in love with Montana. It is a beautiful state. We spend our weekends on long hikes. Every morning I take a walk with my dog before going to work. About 4 weeks in, I finally get a printer. And I'm so excited. I can print out all this training material for all of my mentors. Then we can be ready when we have refugee families come. Then, the same day, I get an email telling me that a refugee family of 6 from Congo would be arriving in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Things just got real. There was not enough time to get everything prepared for this family. I started panicking a little bit, and then I'm like, okay, calm down. I bring together my first mentor team of 5, and we train up together. Now, I answer the questions the best I can, but even for me, this is a new circumstance. I've never resettled under these conditions before. We had one challenge and one concern. The first challenge is that this family of 6 was going to need to have a 3-bedroom apartment. In Missoula, at that time, there were exactly 452 3- or 4-bedroom apartments. 95% of those had already been rented to college students. To make things worse, I hadn't been able to establish a working relationship with a landlord or a property management company. Think about it, it's quite an ask to ask a landlord to rent to a refugee family. They've never met the family before, they don't have jobs or credit histories, they may not speak English, they're not even in the country yet. So it was a task. My concern came from an incident that happened earlier that year. In a neighboring state, white nationalist protesters had showed up at the airport and protested the arrival of a refugee family. I did not want this to happen in Missoula, so I swore my mentor team to secrecy, and I avoided the press for the next 2 weeks. As we get closer to the day of arrival, I still have not found a place for this family, and I'm starting to get nervous. It's so important for a refugee family to start their new lives in a home. I didn't want to put them in a hotel, but it looked like that's what we were going to have to do. Sitting in my office, thinking about where I could find a hotel that would have rooms big enough for a family of 6, a volunteer walks in and he says to me that he wants to loan us his house to house his family. I'm so relieved. He says there's a condition. The family can only live there for 3 months. Why 3 months? Well, because winter's coming in Montana, and this volunteer was going to live in his backyard with his horses and his Highland sheep inside a Mongolian yurt. Yes, a Mongolian yurt. In fact, you can still see it on Google Maps if you look today. So, okay, we have a place for this family to stay. I'm excited. I grab my volunteers and we start preparing the home for the family. We buy furniture, we stock the cupboards with food, we make the beds, we make it feel warm and welcoming. Finally, it's the day of arrival. I'm exhausted. It has been a crazy 2 weeks, a crazy 6 weeks. So here I am, sitting at the airport, and I start to feel nervous. Like, is this family going to be happy here? Are they going to succeed? Are we doing the right thing? What could have I done differently? Is the community prepared? I'm feeling so nervous, I'm almost ready to cry. A volunteer reaches over and taps me on the shoulder and says, "So, how are we going to know the family when they come out of here?" So I say, well, first they'll probably be the last people outside of the gate. They'll be carrying big white and blue IOM bags that have all their important documents. And most likely, even though it's 90 degrees today, they'll probably be wearing winter coats. And as I said this, out walks a family of 6 from Congo wearing their winter coats. They are glistening with sweat. I can see they're exhausted and they're overwhelmed. I go up to them and I say in Swahili, "Welcome." And then I tell them to take their coats off. I go to help Mom with her small baby, and our eyes meet, and I realize I've seen this woman before. She was part of a program I worked on in Yarugusu refugee camp. And she recognizes me. I can tell by her smile. I can see her relief in recognizing a familiar face. Okay, so we get the family, we go get their 3 bags from the luggage claim, and we pile them into the car, and we head to their new home, where the volunteers are waiting with a warm meal. We get to the home, we pile into the house, and then I take the dad and the son and I walk them around. I explain how everything in the house works, talk about calling 911 for an emergency, and make sure they know how to reach out to me by phone. We come back into the living room and there's the volunteers, sitting with the children, reading them books and playing games. Mom is off in the kitchen with another volunteer. She's learning how to fry fish on the electric range for the first time. As I look at the family, I see a sense of calm and belonging. And I realized they're gonna be okay. And I'm filled with hope that, like my husband and I, this family would have the opportunity to fall in love with Montana.